Good morning. Thank you for coming to this first meeting of the work group on the Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Education Program. I'm State Senator Barbara Favola, and my Senate district is contained within Arlington County. The Pentagon resides in my Senate district, and I will be chairing this work group. I would like to take a moment for my colleagues to introduce themselves, and I will start to my right.
Thank you. I'm Senator Bryce Reeves. I'm a veteran of the United States Army. I'm happy to be working specifically with this group of individuals that'll be here today because collectively I've worked with them probably the last 13 years on some pretty tough issues, and I think everybody wants to get to the right spot. So I appreciate Chairman Favola's leadership in this. My colleague, Senator McPike, and Senator DeSteph, and I know we're missing one. She'll be here later. But thank you all for engaging. I really do appreciate the outside groups and their comments that they have. And I really do appreciate where we're headed, and I think we'll get some resolve out of this. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator DeSteph.
Senator Bill DeSteph. I represent Virginia Beach, Norfolk, the entire Eastern Shore. I'm a retired naval veteran, Navy Special Warfare Intelligence Officer. So a lot of the folks that have been commenting and we've been talking about, I served with. So I'm very happy to be on this committee. I'm very happy that everybody has come out to discuss this and give us your stories, your opinions, your thoughts, and really appreciate the fact that you've driven between 2 and 8 hours to be here today. So thank you very much.
Thank
you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Jeremy McPike, a senator for the 29th District, which is Prince William County and North Stafford, including Quantico. 23 years in the fire service. Father was Navy, stepfather Army. Proud to have been the patron of the 2019 expansion of this program. And I wanted to concur, Madam Chair, with Senator Reeves' statements. This is a group of senators that have worked through many different issues, whether it be foster care, many other complicated things that we use data to drive our decisions, and that really helps to inform, and look forward to the staff's presentation today. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, colleagues. It is an honor to be chair of this work group with all you on it. And yes, we have worked through many issues, and we will, I think, find a very satisfactory solution to the issue before us. I do want to note that this work group was formed at the request of the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee Chair, Senator Lucas. And I want to thank Senator Lucas and for her foresight. And I also want to note that she has introduced Senate Bill 6009, and she introduced that bill last night. It's important that we all know the bill does several things. First, it delays the effective date for the changes that were made in the budget until July 1, 2025. So, in effect, that is a repeal of what we did in the budget until July 1 of next year. Her bill also designates an additional $45 million from the anticipated end-of-year surplus for our educational waivers. This additional $45 million, added to the $20 million that was in each year of the biennium for this budget, would bring the funding to $65 million for each year of the biennium. That would meet the anticipated expense that many of our finance folks have indicated would be the number. We also are, in her bill, we direct JLARC to conduct a full analysis of the program and to report by September 1 to the Senate. I think this bill is a reflection of the input we have heard to date. I want you all to know that we have listened very carefully. Your personal stories have been helpful to us, and we appreciate your collaboration and your professionalism and your dealings with the lawmakers. I now want to turn to the stated goals of this work group. Our job is to learn in detail about this program, to understand how it works, to understand who benefits, to understand how the universities administer the program, and to figure out how we can best serve those who are intended to be helped by the program. This work group plans to hold 4 additional meetings, and it is my expectation that staff will be, I think, doing a doodle poll for members so we can identify the dates of those four upcoming meetings as soon as possible, and we will post them. So you will have an opportunity to plan for your activities and to make arrangements if you want to come and be here in person. There will also be an opportunity for written comments, and I will ask April to explain how we will accept the written comments. This is a fairly new opportunity for a work group. April Keys.
Madam Chair, you made a special request for the ability to collect written comments, which is not typically done. But what staff has been able to arrange with the Senate's clerk's office is that at the end of this meeting, we'll put the slide up that has a QR code and also the link. There will be a link and a form on both our website and on streaming for those who are streaming and aren't here today. And it will allow for comments to be collected from 12 p.m. today till midnight. And so if anybody goes ahead of time to that form, it will not start until 12 p.m., but it is a 12-hour window to allow for flexibility for individuals who could not be here today and people who may be on different schedules. So at your request, Madam Chair, we did work with the clerk's office to get that done.
Thank you, April. I think that might be of help to those of you who want to participate in this conversation. Public comment will only be done in person based on Senate rules. Work groups and subcommittees do not take virtual comment. So that was another reason why I thought the opportunity for written comment would be important, because not everybody can come in person. I do want to thank you all for sending me as many emails as you have. I have read through every one of them, and for those of you who have called my office or my mobile phone, I have returned your phone calls, and I have had many conversations one-on-one, and that's been great. I do want to make it clear that unless each chamber of the General Assembly passes the same language and the governor signs that language, unless that happens, the current budget language with the reforms that some of you found difficult and challenging, that budget language will be in effect. So we have to remember, if our goal is to actually accomplish something like repealing the budget language and coming up with other guardrails, such as Senator Lucas's bill has a sunset date, adds the money that we need, and actually requires JLARC to report to us by September 1. Unless we want something like that to pass, the current budget language will stand. So I just want to make that clear, because this is both, this is a balance of activism, which I was an activist before I was a public official. It's a balance of activism and actually making public policy. So I just feel, for transparency's sake, I need to put that out there. The other thing I want to note is this work group will be hopefully able to report in a written version, which will be made public by September 15th. So we will have plenty of time, if we get the JLARC report on time and this group's report by September 15th, or by late September. We'll have time to cogitate on that, have more input, more comments, and then go through a regular legislative process in 2025. That concludes my remarks. I do want to note that our additional member has joined us. Senator Rome, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Danica Rome. I am the State Senator for Western Prince William County, the City of Manassas, and the City of Manassas Park for the 30th District. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rome. Senator DeStef had a question. He wanted to ensure that any emails that came to me or came to the Senate staff were actually dispersed to all of us. And I will ask Ms. Keyes if she can arrange to have that happen. Yeah, that's so. Be assured if you contact me, your contact will be shared with committee members. Today, we're going to have presentations, and we tried valiantly to get some outside presenters. We wanted to hear from other stakeholders, but our time frame was so quick, some of our outside presenters could not be available. So we're going to hear from our Senate Finance staff today, and I'm going to move right away to item 2 unless my colleagues have a statement or a comment.
Madam
Senator
Chairman.
Reeves.
Yes, Madam Chairman. You have on your desk a proxy that I presented to you earlier. Unfortunately, I have pressing business that I've got to attend to. So Senator DeStef will hold. I don't foresee us taking votes, but he has my proxy in the meantime.
There will be no votes taken today. This is all informational. And the presentations that you hear today will be posted online. And the agenda's online, and this meeting is being live streamed. So just for point of fact. Thank you, Senator Reeves. Okay. Let's go to the overview of the Virginia Military Survivors of Dependence Education Program. And Wendy Kong, welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the work group. As Senator Favola mentioned, we are going to provide a brief overview. I think in future meetings, we'll be bringing in more of the outside agencies that are administering it. So what I'll try to do is provide a high-level piece. In some occasions, I'll try to answer as many questions, but we may need to defer to being able to answer questions at a later time once we have more details and can circle back with the state agencies. To just talk about what we'll cover today very quickly is, I'll talk a little bit about the general program as it stands today, give a history of the program, how this is administered and supported, talk a little bit about data and reporting, and go over the changes included in Chapter 2 during the 2024 special session, and then the proposed changes that, Madam Chair, you just mentioned in SB 6009. So to just quickly talk about the program benefit, there are two benefits to the Virginia Military Survivor and Dependent programs. One is there is a tuition and fee waiver that is provided at public institutions in Virginia for up to 4 years or 8 semesters, and that waiver is applicable to any degree program. And as I mentioned, this is the program as it exists prior to July 1 with the new language taking effect. In addition, some beneficiaries, and I'll talk about that in a minute, can get an additional stipend of up to $2,200 to support their education expenses. And that is in addition to the tuition and fee waiver. They will also receive that. In terms of eligibility, it is eligible to a spouse or a child between the ages of 16 to 29. There are some exceptions on that. A veteran who served in the armed forces, the reserves, or National Guard, and who, while serving in active duty during military operations, was killed or became a prisoner of war. In addition, those who are at least 90% disabled due to such service, being in the Armed Forces, Reserves, and National Guard, has been discharged or released under conditions other than dishonorable. One thing I'll note, there's an asterisk next to the child. There are some exceptions for stepchildren that are provided below, and this was part of an expansion that was included, I think it was in 2022, that if the stepchild is of a veteran that was deceased due to military operations and the child was claimed on tax returns or on the defense enrollment eligibility while reporting on active duty, they are eligible. Madam Chair, you had asked about residency and domicile, and I know we'll probably be having some more discussions this in future meetings. So there's a lot of different component parts to it. So I'll do a high level for some pieces, but again, if there's other questions, I think we'll have them at a later time. For domicile, this is what qualifies you for the benefit, and domicile in the terms is that you've heard domicile and residency, and I talked to Chev a little bit about this. To explain a little bit, you can have 2 residences, but you can really only have 1 domicile. So domicile means that you've established kind of a commitment to stay in a certain area. So you might be doing tax returns there, you might be registered to vote and so forth, but you could have 2 residences, but the main one is where your domicile is. Currently, you are required to have domicile at the time of entering your active service or called to duty, or you need to have at least 5 years, that domicile at least 5 years immediately prior to, or a physical presence. So that could be that residency component prior to the date on which the admission application was submitted. There are a variety of other applications within that 5-year realm that apply to survivors and dependents of a veteran who is deceased based on how that was established prior to that. There's a lot of details on that, so I won't go into too much of that today, but that gives you a brief overview. I did mention the beneficiaries of the stipend program. This is more of a subset, so they get the tuition and fee, and then they also may be eligible for a stipend, and that is for eligible spouses and children of a veteran who is killed or prisoner of war, or who is at least 90% disabled as a direct result of military operations. There's a lot on this page, and this is more for a reference as we go through the program. This is a bit of a summary of just how the program has changed over time. The program has been around for since when we had some staffers look into it on the House side, 1930. It was expanded over time, as you'll see here. Prior to 1998, if you wanted to qualify, you needed to be a resident of Virginia when you entered your service, and then that was later expanded to dependents of those who were residents for at least 10 years prior to application. At the time, it was only limited to children ages 16 to 25, and your service eligibility was you need to be killed or totally or permanently disabled due to war service. And the benefit was a tuition and fee waiver. From what we've researched, this looks like it was an appropriation base, so it was not something that the institutions waived, that it was potentially funded through the General Assembly. 1998 through 2014 is when we started to see some more changes. The requirement moved from 10 years of residency to 5 years, and then it was expanded to that physical presence that I mentioned in 2014. In 2006, this is when spouses were added, and the age of the children was expanded from 25 to 29. And then in 2007, there was some exceptions that were allowed for extenuating circumstances above 29. In terms of the service eligibility, this was also a change in 2006 from totally and permanently disabled to at least 90%. And then in 2007 is when that stipend was added that I mentioned earlier. And this is to cover other expenses outside of tuition and fees. And from what we can tell, this is where the waiver also moved to the institution space. So they're required to waive the tuition. So it's something called foregone revenue in terms of providing that waiver to students. The stipend still remains supported by state general funds.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Wendy, from this chart, it's my understanding that then 2007 is the year which it became really not appropriated. Is that right? And sort of shifts to sort of off books versus actively funding the program. Is that right?
Yeah, and we need to, this is, as I mentioned, with this piece, this is what we've found. We've been trying to dig a little bit deeper to figure out that piece, but that was what we had seen from legislation changes. There's been a lot of wording tweaks throughout the years.
Thank you.
Senator Youssef.
Madam Chair, Wendy, if I may. Can you explain the difference between Tier 1 versus Tier 2 on the stipend program?
Yes, sir. So the Department of Veteran Services has, they've called it 2 tiers on their website. And the Tier 1, if I recall, is that what I talked about, everybody's eligible for a tuition waiver. And then I believe the Tier 2 is those who are eligible for the stipend, the waiver plus the stipend. And so that's terminology that they have and is available on their site. So the tier 2 is the everyone, you still get the waiver, but you also get the stipend. And as I mentioned earlier, that is related, the disability or the veteran who is deceased needs to have had that during the war operations. On the last bottom part here, there's a few more changes that had occurred in 2022. There was some waiving of residency based on specific unique instances of what had happened that DBS could consider. And it was expanded to that stepchild that I mentioned earlier in terms of the recipients that are eligible. And in 2019, this is the change from war service to all service-related injuries except for a stipend program. And again, so for the benefits, there's still the tuition waiver and then the stipends available to individuals that qualify under that military operations provision. And currently in the budget, that's up to $2,200 per individual. It's based on their enrollment and what full or part-time status they may be.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the witness. All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So if we could go back to the last panel for a sec. So one thing I've noticed here is even from when it said appropriation-based and then where it says supported by general fund for the actual waiver, all of those are, in fact, general fund dollars at the end of the day, right? And the issue, I think, one thing that's kind of coming up now where we've had cost escalation since 2019 is the idea of can we have a dedicated revenue stream that is specific for this and it is to only be funding this? Or if we can have a line of money that's coming in more or less where we know we're going to be able to fund this in perpetuity based on the growth that we're expecting. So number one, has there been any discussion about a dedicated revenue stream for this? And then number two, that would be beyond just a general fund appropriation. And then the second part on this is there a graph or anything that would basically be able to show the rate of increase in terms of usage, in terms of dollars spent from the state from 2019 when Senator McPike's bill passed to where we are now? Because at the time, that fiscal impact statement that we got was what, $5 million at the time, and now we're at over 60 million. And so I would like to see what that rate of growth was for each of those years. And I coach all of that with the idea of a dedicated funding stream. So basically we won't have to continue having this issue come up year over year over year.
All right, there we go. Madam Chair, not delegate, sorry, I apologize, Senator Rome. I apologize about that, old habits die hard. I want to take a stab at the revenue stream question just from the perspective of I was the higher education analyst for many years prior to being the director. I want to say, while that has not been an active discussion, I do believe I've heard that from some members. I will tell you that it is typically very difficult to tie revenue sources to one particular program, and I will say that does not mean it can't be done, that all things I think would be considered as part of this work group. I'm just trying to give you some context from past discussions. You might also remember, I do think the majority party, and there was some bipartisan support for some of the modernization of sales tax. I think the concern is also long-term that the revenue streams are starting to fall somewhat. And so I'll just say the work group should consider all those things in context as they look at any recommendations. And I'll answer for Wendy and then she can supplement this, but I do believe one of her slides answers your second question.
Okay, thank you. Good questions. Go ahead, Wendy.
And yes, Madam Chair, Senator Rome, we do have a slide that'll be forthcoming in terms of the changes. For the program administration, the Department of Veterans Services is responsible for providing outreach to eligible individuals, certifying the initial eligibility. You do apply through the Department of Veterans Services first in order to be eligible. They're verifying the qualifications that I've mentioned earlier regarding that. In talking with them, they also monitor ongoing eligibility. I mentioned that 4-year limitation, so they're also keeping track of exhaustion of benefits in order to know where those are. The State Council of Higher Education for Virginia currently, they're responsible for reimbursing institutions for the stipend program. That's largely because students are moving between. We don't necessarily know where students are going, and so it was more of a facilitation to provide to SHEV and then to reimburse institutions for that. And they do that once they've been able to verify students are enrolled at their specific institution. They also are responsible for collecting and reporting data from institutions. This is a responsibility across all programs, but they do collect student-level data, and I'll talk about that in a minute, as well as financial aid data, including this program. They also are responsible for guidance related to state financial aid assistance programs, including this one, and the domicile residency to institutions. So as things are passed, they're often charged to provide guidance to the institutions on how to apply that.
Madam Chair.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and appreciate the start and stop for the questions, but it's, I think, helpful for us to interact with the slides, if that's right, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
The guidance, I guess, from page 6, based on the current language, and I know we're somewhat in limbo, but has the governor and administration provided any guidance on the current language to families?
Not that we are aware of to date in terms of the guidance that would be issued or that would apply to the changes that go into effect July 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know that's a big question while we're working through the legislative process. I know the families still have questions about what's in and what's not, and it'd be helpful to have the administration provide some level of guidance of what the budget language means, since they're sort of the interpreting agency.
Correct.
I think we can maybe arrange to have a briefing with our Department of Veterans Services and certainly SHEV, and there'll be other outside groups that will be coming in as well. But thank you for your comment.
Madam Chair.
Senator DeSteff.
Madam Chair, Wendy, and this may be for a future meeting as well. It's good and interesting to see how this kind of lays out between DVS and SHEV. It looks like SHEV is given more in the guidance where the initial eligibility is with DVS, but there seems to be a missing link here because as we've received awards for the last 2 years on this program through DVS and the expansion of this program, we're now on the other side, from the SHEV side, saying, whoa, it's costing too much, but we're laying out goals in DVS to expand this. I think it was 21 and 22 or 22 and 23, where their goal is to push this another 30 or 40% larger than it is today. And that's a published goal that we're winning awards on. So I think if we can get DVS and SHEV in here to kind of give us a better feel for not just the authority, but it sounds like one hand's doing one thing without the other hand really knowing what's going on. So I think that maybe
I think we will
expand on that a little
we'll
bit
get
too.
speakers from both of those organizations and probably additional
The
organizations.
authority that SHEV has over this program seems disproportionate when it comes to the authority that DVS has.
Senator Roan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up on the senator's comment. So I think actually the senator actually kind of helped make a case for why we would need a dedicated funding stream for this if it is being promoted and actively being promoted as something that the administration wants to continue to grow, right? And so if the intention here is not only that we want more people to apply for this who are, and keep in mind, who are already eligible, right? And that has to be the bottom line here. It's not that we're creating a new eligibility class, it's who is eligible under the existing system. I would look at existing precedent that we have for a number of other dedicated funding streams, as we certainly do in transportation, for example, whether it's Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program, whether it's what we do in Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, whether it's what you do actually in Hampton Roads, for example. I think there's any number of things. And when you have that, you're able to minimize any sort of restrictions that would have to come other than the most basic that we were talking about in terms of that residency requirement that, having spoken to some of the members here, or some of the advocates here, it seemed like that was one thing that people seem to be agreed on is like, hey, if you're living in Virginia, if you're long-term living in Virginia, that's the person that this is meant to be, to make sure that someone doesn't come in, get it, and then leave, right?
Madam Chair, if I could do a quick follow-up point.
A quick
on
follow-up,
Senate
and then I think we're going to have to hold our questions for a moment because we're not making much progress. Go ahead.
And I apologize for that.
Senator
Just as
DeStefano.
a follow-up, today the way the program works, we fund the universities, state universities substantially. I mean, a majority of their funding comes from the General Assembly. This is absorbed within them. We don't have a separate dedicated stream, or we're not giving them money based on how many veterans they're doing. And that's probably the catalyst that's gotten the concern of where we are today. We're asking them to absorb this within. And disproportionately, certain universities are doing more and more for the veterans and really marketing that as, working hand in hand with DVS to do so. ODU, I think GMU, I believe, up there, or JMU, one of the two, GMU, I believe it is another one that's significant on this. We as a General Assembly can continue doing it this way and don't need a dedicated revenue stream. All we really need to do is say, hey, next year, since you're doing this, we can just provide you a little more money to backfill what you spent last year or what we're anticipating you spending next year.
I think that
I don't want to get into the revenue stream because then we're going to get into skill games and all the other stuff, which we really don't want to pull into this whole thing.
I think we should sort of focus on learning as much as we can, and then we will be considering options, colleagues, and there are many options, and there are many ways to slice the cake if, in fact, we're looking to support the program. Let's focus on how we want the program to be fleshed out. Colleagues, I'm going to ask you to hold your questions, if you will, unless there's something really compelling in terms of clarification, so we can sort of move through the presentation.
And Madam Chair, I can try to go quickly. I know we want to try to get through a lot of content and leave time for public comment. So just as a quick note, the stipends, as we've talked about, are provided through general fund. The other part is through the institutions as foregone revenue. We had a question earlier about the data, and this is a slide that shows the program over the last 10 years, and this is reported that's provided by SHEV. SHEV collects data from the institutions. They're required to do this for all students, not just this program, annually, and provide data regarding enrollments, financial aid, and all of that. So there's individual student records that are submitted by the institutions each year, and we pulled this data straight from their reports that are available online. The last 10 years, you'll see the data, and we've highlighted the question about what happened since the expansion, and this is where you start to see. We do want to note that we have heard that, yes, there was expansion, but there's also a lot of students that could have been coming of age, that were meeting graduation, the marketing of the program, as well as other things that we've heard regarding, it's because of medical records being able to certify your eligibility also could contribute to this, so a variety of components. This is on the middle column, the growth of the percentage of students. You'll see from 2019 to 2023, 49%, 49%, and 45%. Growth of the waivers was 62%, 61%, and 48%. We do want to note regarding the concerns about the SHEV projection data. We provide all data to members regarding what the program is doing. That's data that was provided to us. This was part of the SHEV data given to us at the beginning of the session, and they had assumed a 50% growth rate for 2022-23. If you look at the bottom, it was not as high. They were looking from what we heard of prior years with the 62, 61, and 48. And so the numbers that you see here are actuals. This is 6,125 and 65 million in waivers for 23. There's a lot of numbers on this page. This is more for reference in terms of where the different students are attending. The majority, about 80%, or 81 to 82%, are in the in-state undergraduate programs. mostly in the four-year programs. And then there's some out-of-state students as well as graduate students. And this includes the first professional programs as well. So about 15% are in the graduate programs and a small amount are in the out-of-state undergraduate programs. There was a note earlier about where the students are enrolling. And you'll see here that the enrollments are spread across a variety of institutions. The community college systems are the largest, but we have the 23 community. We're reporting for one system, and there's the 23 community colleges across that. We've included ODU, also combined them with EVMS since they're in the process of merging, VCU numbers as well as George Mason, but we see enrollments even as far out as UVA-wise in Southwest Virginia. We've talked a little bit about this, but how this came about in terms of the growth and costs was coming from the institution side. They are required to submit 6-year plans every year, and those are submitted to the Secretary of Ed, Secretary of Finance, Department of Planning Budget, the staff directors of House Appropriations, and then finally of Senate Finance and House Appropriations, and then also reported to the Governor and General Assembly. They had said they started to see a significant increase in the program and the foregone revenue for them, and had mentioned that. SHEV also is required to annually provide budget and policy recommendations to the General Assembly. And in January 2024, they estimated the waiver costs could, at that time, I was mentioning the 50% earlier, that it could increase to 180 to 190 million by FY26.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think one of the questions that we'll definitely need is to understand the sort of, we have a lot of kids coming through from post war on terror, right? And so you see this cohort coming through of kids that, were born through the early 2000s, now coming of age. I mean, I'd be interested in understanding if there was some sort of Weldon Cooper data, sort of cohort data in terms of how SHEV projected those numbers. And if not, that's certainly something that we need to understand. If this is a temporary bubble over the next couple of years and then smooths out, I think that's really going to be important to this work group's information set. And I'm sure we don't have it yet, but I just want to flag it for something that we're definitely going to need to understand. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, projections going forward to the degree we can be accurate would help us.
And Madam Chair, I believe the 23, 24, we should have those numbers very soon. And I think that we're going to see about a 30%. So it'll be a downward trend when those come out, which is significantly different than what we've been briefed on in the past.
April, did you want to comment?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the work group, I did just want to note also that the JLARC, proposed JLARC study would also look at those projections, et cetera, as part of that proposal and Senator Lucas's bill.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
So just in terms of the SHEV recommendations, they had recommended both general fund support to support the waivers and the waiver amounts, and also potential policy modifications that could include one or more of the following, which was prioritizing undergraduate students, in-state students, requiring FAFSA, and applying other forms of aid first. And this report was something that they submitted in January and had several meetings on in the fall. I won't go through all of this. I know that you've heard these components before, and I want to be cautious in the interest of time. In terms of different actions that we're taking during the session, we had a bill that was introduced during session that was proposing similar things to the SHEV recommendations, and also to expand to the stepchildren of veterans. That was changed to a study, and later changed to, it was voted out of the Senate and then left in House Appropriations. The Senate budget had proposed something consistent with the SHEV recommendations and similar to SB 34 as it was introduced. And those were proposed changes, as well as the House had $20 million of general fund to SHEV to reimburse institutions, had similar eligibility requirements consistent with the SHEV recommendations, but it did differ in terms of applying changes to all waiver programs and not just the military survivors, and included a financial need component. Those changes applied to current waivers and all future waivers. The Senate budget had tried to provide a hold harmless. The Chapter 2 included the majority of the language that was included from the House budget with the addition of the hold harmless, which I'll talk about quickly in this next slide. So where we are today, I've talked about the program prior to July 1. It applies to military survivors, all degrees, 4 years, the residency. There's no requirement for a financial aid application or satisfactory academic progress, and the application of state and federal aid to support the waiver. Those changes are more what you see on the bottom half of that slide, where there is a requirement to complete a financial aid application to meet satisfactory academic progress. This is something that's defined by the federal government. If you receive state or federal aid, and institutions are required to monitor in order for the student to receive those aid. And then application of state and federal aid to support the waiver. Yes, and this is where that guidance will be helpful, because there's a lot of questions about how that aid would be applied.
Wendy, it would be helpful if, as we progress, and I'm not sure at what meeting you might be able to do this, but I would really like to understand how the colleges and universities are administering the waivers, and if in fact they are already asking students to complete a FAFSA, or then they may be able to do that without our guidance. That would be helpful information, and of course having Chev's guidance before us would also be helpful.
Madam Chair, we can, I know Chev has some data on who completes the FAFSA, and then we can also work on the institution feedback as well.
That would be good. Thank you.
I have one quick question, if I may.
Senator DeStef?
And Madam Chair, I've asked the AG for an opinion on how we would run this program, and if it's allowed to run the way that having the FAFSA, because with the FAFSA, as I understand the FAFSA, and maybe I can get Wendy or somebody can explain this a little better, but as I understand it, you get the federal contribution and you have a family contribution, and you can't get the federal contribution without the family contribution, which leaves a very, very, very small amount. But my concern on that is I don't believe that the state can dictate that that has to go in that sequence before we put in money to this or we do our piece of this. So I've asked the AG to give me an opinion, because when you look at and read chapter 30, and I think it's paragraph 35 through 41 or 42, as you read the inner workings of this, what we're trying to do is kind of usurp how that works. So I've asked the AG to give us an opinion on that. I was trying to get it prior to this meeting. He said I should have it in the next week or two. I'm still pushing them to get that, because that's would come into play with what we're trying to do, if we're allowed to do it or not. And then on an administrative note, I just wanted to push that HB 6003 was passed 91-0 by the House a few minutes ago.
I would just say that we would need more complete information on the FAFSA, and if you do get an opinion from the AG, please share it with staff.
As soon as I get it, I'll share it with the entire group, the Senate, the House, and everybody else. I'll make sure everybody has it.
Can you guys turn the volume up a little bit? We're having a really hard time hearing. The microphones aren't working very well.
Please, colleagues, speak to through your microphone and make sure the little green light's on. We will try to speak loudly, and we'll try to make sure our mics are on.
Yeah, your mic's not on right now. No, it's not.
Tricky little things.
It's tricky little things, right? Wendy, sorry for the interruptions, but we're enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, I just couldn't hear what Senator Steph was saying about what he was asking the AG specifically.
Senator DeStef actually asked the AG to give an opinion on whether or not we could require FAFSAs if in fact we were trying to complement the FAFSA requirements with a waiver. And he is agreed to share that AG opinion.
Thank you.
So, and it will help us. Go ahead, Wendy. I think you're page 14,
Yeah.
slide 14. Go ahead.
I just want to note that there was a lot of questions about how the waivers would be provided and applied to Senator DeSteff's, and I think that's where we need more of that guidance. So, in terms of what you mentioned, Madam Chair, with what was introduced, you've covered a lot of this, so I do want to be cautious of time. I think I do want to note the components of the JLARC study to really address some of the concerns that have been mentioned by members as well. The analysis of participant data to really look into it. There's some questions about how that's compiled and put together, the assessment of the waiver cost by institutions, the comparison to other states, and then also methods to estimate the enrollment and costs. And that does have a completion date of September 1, 2024.
Good.
With that, I believe I'm done. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I know you want to hear from other people as well.
I think we wanted to have more of a conversation, so I allowed questions as you were presenting. But colleagues, do you have any further questions for Ms. Khan?
Madam Chair, I just have one quick one.
Senator
I
DeSteff?
promise this will be quick. So I see that Chev makes recommendations to, back on page 12, I believe it was, to the budget committees, and that we put a lot of credibility in the recommendations that Chev is making, but I don't see where DVS is making recommendations. Does DVS actually make recommendations to the budget committee on this program?
If the Appropriations and Finance Committee asks for information from our departments, they regularly provide information. So I will ask staff if we have been receiving information from the Department of Veterans Affairs when we've inquired about. Let's get an answer to this.
Madam Chair, so I did reach out to DVS last Friday for some questions related to today's presentation, and I'm waiting to get some information back. I believe the question is more specific to did they submit any kind of decision packages or anything like that leading up to session related to this program, and I'll double check, but I'm not aware of any.
Okay. Okay. Staff, does anybody want to add to this?
Are you, Madam Chair, are you asking about the DVS question, about whether or not they submit?
Yeah, I guess it was sort of twofold, whether they submit information to us, but also whether or not they comment, they have a relationship with Chev, and if there's information that's passed along to the university. Is that your question?
Well, Madam Chair, my question is, if Chev is making a recommendation to our Finance Committee, shouldn't DVS be making a recommendation saying, hey, we're really pushing this program, we're looking, and our goal is to get it to 10,000 people. Chev should know that when they're briefing our finance department, and this is my concern. It's just kind of a concern, and this may actually be happening.
And it's a question of
maybe this has already happened.
That may be a question of coordination, and I would like to believe that every one of our agencies takes their mission to administer our programs to heart and markets the programs.
Yes, ma'am, and I understand completely, but my question was, so we know Chev is providing input, but does DVS provide input to the Finance Committee as well?
April.
Madam Chair, I will try to answer the question to the best of my ability, but what I'm going to tell you is DVS is an executive branch agency. They go through a process through the governor's office with the administration to submit information, budget requests, decision packages, all things our staff review. And I would say that is not something that the Money Committee staffs control. Certainly, we can follow up and ask questions. I think what I would just add about what Chev put forward is they were responding to the 6-year plans, which are required in code, to things that the higher education institutions were reporting. And certainly, if you're bringing to our attention that there should be more coordination, we are. I know there are members of the administration here in the audience. I will happily pass that along to the administration to request that happens during this next budget cycle.
Coordination is sort of key here.
And my question goes back to, we know that Chev is providing their 6-year plan, but is DVS providing their 6-year plan that Chev is basing their 6-year plan on? Because DVS is saying our goal is to expand this program to 9,000 by this date. So is Chev taking that into consideration when they're briefing our finance committee? And that's all I'm trying to get to.
Let's April answer. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Senator DeSteff, I would again reiterate that the 6-year plan is a requirement in the Code of Virginia based on legislation that the members passed. I am unaware that there's any code stipulation that requires the Department of Veteran Services to do that. I do think your concern is a valid one, that perhaps there should be additional coordination, but there is no requirement that I'm aware of for them to do that. And I know, again, that the administration officials are here in the audience, and we will pass along that there absolutely should be coordination. It seems logical to me.
The chair can also write a letter if that would be appropriate. I'd be happy to write a letter noting that this question came up and we would expect coordination going forward if that is consensus of the group.
And for all we know, it could have been happening.
It absolutely could be, and they could write back and tell me so, or offer to come to the committee. So thank you, Senator DeSteff. Yes, are you finished? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have a question, Senator McPike?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. As we transition, I know we're going to focus on veteran benefit, but I do want to recognize, obviously, some of the budget language scooped in, line of duty death, and we do have police and fire in the room, is what I acknowledge that is still on the table and concern that we're trying to work through. Today is more focused on the veteran side of the benefit. So I do appreciate those who showed up also and concerned about line of duty death. And just want to note to the group that obviously residency in that regards is separate. We do have police and fire that work in the Commonwealth but live out of state in many circumstances around border counties and cities, and so that's sort of a separate issue and data set that we need to figure out a way to restore. So I just want to acknowledge those who have come to share time with us today.
Thank you for mentioning that, and the entire work group acknowledges your contribution, so thank you for being here as well. Any other comments? Okay, we thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Ms. Kong. Next, we're on item 3 of the agenda, last item before public comment. Summary of federal education benefits for veterans' families. Go ahead. Would you please introduce yourself?
For the staff of the committee.
Thank you, Katie.
So similar to what Chairwoman Favola and Wendy outlined, our hope today had been to have a federal expert to come here and talk to you on the federal benefits. Unfortunately, a few folks were out of town, so we're continuing to work with our federal partners to secure those experts. I'm going to go through a high-level overview. I have some resources on the back of the slides for you, and then I can try to answer limited questions, but if I'm unable to answer them, we'll certainly collect them and have that federal expert coming in. So based on my research, the 2 programs that are primarily available for veterans, spouses, and children are the Survivors and Dependents Educational Assistance Program and the Post-9/11 GI Bill program. We'll go into the details of both of these programs on the next slides, but the DEA program was first established in 1956 for children whose parent had died in the line of duty, and it was later expanded to include spouses and additional service-connected disabilities. The Post-9/11 GI Bill was enacted in 2008, but of course was retroactive to those who had served on or after 9/11, 2001. Both of these programs provide payments for tuition, fees, and associated costs, but the payment mechanisms differ and the amounts of the payments differ. And just to be clear on kind of what this presentation includes and what it doesn't include, it includes primary educational assistance programs for veterans and spouses and children, but it doesn't include things like education that are going to be really just dedicated to the service member or the veteran. It doesn't have non-educated relation programs. So for example, the death gratuity benefit provided to certain next of kin. And it doesn't have educational benefits that are really directed only to military spouses as opposed to military and veteran spouses. So moving first to the first primary program available to children and spouses of veterans. So this is the DEA program, and it's available to children and spouses of service members who died or have a total permanent disability resulting from a service-connected disability. This is going to include folks who died in the line of duty and those who are missing in action or essentially prisoners of war. And many of you are likely very knowledgeable about this, but Total disability is defined in the Code of Federal Regulations as impairment of mind or body, which is sufficient to render it impossible for the average person to follow a substantially gainful occupation. So that's kind of that definition of what's a total 100% disability. And certain disabilities are established in the Code of Federal Regulations as qualifying. For example, one's the loss of sight in both eyes, but others are determined by the U.S. Veterans Administration using their rating schedule. So generally, benefits cover or currently cover 36 months of education. This was reduced from 45 months in August of 2018. There's currently no age or time limit on using the benefits for those who have recently become eligible. For those who became eligible prior to August 2023, there are some time limits that are listed there for you. And in terms of combining GI Bill education benefits, so the general rule is that if two benefits are due to one qualifying event or period of service, you essentially have to choose which benefit you're using. But if they were earned from two different qualifying events, you can combine them subject to a cumulative cap. So for example, if a person is eligible for the DEA benefit and the post 9/11 benefit due to the death of one parent, the individual must choose which benefit to use. But if they're eligible for both of them due to multiple qualifying events, there's an 81-month cumulative cap for those DEA beneficiaries. So for example, that might happen if someone was also a service member and got a GI Bill benefit from that. So moving to what DEA beneficiaries receive. So the VA provides a monthly allowance of up to $1,488 depending on the individual's enrollment status. I'm just kind of looking at what that might mean annually. So for example, if the beneficiary was in school for about 8 months for the fall and spring semesters, that would be a little less than $12,000 that year. The allowance goes directly to the student and can be used for a range of associated costs, including tuition and fees, books, and housing. You have to be 18 or have completed a secondary education to be eligible, and the allowance is provided to those enrolled both in institutions of higher learning and non-college degree programs. On-the-job training is also eligible, but it does have a lower monthly rate, and that's adjusted downwards based on how far along you are in the program. Just a couple of things to note about the DEA benefit. Public institutions cannot charge more than the in-state rate to DEA beneficiaries who are actually living in-state. The rate is adjusted depending, of course, on the number of courses, and beneficiaries are also eligible for up to $1,200 for tutorial assistance and up to $2,000 per certification or licensing test.
I just want to make one clarifying point. The GI benefits are actually provided to the member, and then the member can decide to pass it on. So it's not based on a qualifying service event of disability or prisoner of war. It's a benefit that's earned by the service member, and they can use it or they can choose to pass it on until that benefit's gone. I just want to clarify that because it's kind of misleading the way it's put here.
Madam
Katie?
Madam Chair, Senator DeSteph, this is specific to the education program. So the next slides that we're going to talk about are going to be more specific to that post 9/11 GI Bill benefit. So this is a separate program compared to the GI Bill.
Members of the audience, I ask you to not speak out when we're being briefed. That's impolite and it's not helpful for the members here, and it's not helpful for others in the audience. Thank you. Go ahead.
And just to read it too, the source of most of this is the Congressional Research Service reports and the VA website. But I'll move on to the GI benefit entitlement, which hopefully will make it a little bit clearer. So moving to the post 9/11 GI Bill eligibility. So there are two ways that you can be eligible for this. First, I guess as I stated in the first slide, the post 9/11 GI Bill is for those serving on or after 9/11/2001, and for the service member themselves to be eligible for the GI Bill, they have to serve at least 90 days on aggregate active duty, 30 days on continuous active duty before being discharged for service-connected disability, or be a Purple Heart recipient. So then moving to when a spouse or child might be eligible for that post 9/11 benefit, there's the Fry Scholarship, which is children and spouses of service members who died in the line of duty or from a service-connected disability while in the selective reserve. My understanding is that selected reserve is those who are in the Army Reserves, but they're kind of the most ready, and they're often going to be the first that are called up. And the second way that a spouse or child could be eligible through this post 9/11 GI Bill is that the children or spouse of service members eligible to transfer their post 9/11 GI Bill benefit, which includes those who have served at least 6 years of service and commit to serving an additional 4 years, or a Purple Heart recipient, so essentially 10 years of service on active duty or selective reserve. Generally, unless the member has deceased, they must currently be serving to transfer their benefits. And beginning in 2018, the VA also distributes unused benefits to transferees if the service member passes away. Similar to the DEA benefit, this benefit covers 36 months of post-secondary education, and there's no longer an expiration date on using the benefit for those eligible after January 1st, 2013. So moving to the next slide. So this is the benefit that a spouse or a child may be eligible for through the GI Bill benefit. And this can go to payments to support tuition and fees, housing, books and supplies, tutorial assistance, licensing or certification fees, again, generally for up to 36 months, and for eligible individuals pursuing GI Bill approved programs. GI Bill approved programs, I'm sure you all are familiar, but that's going to generally include programs at accredited and non-accredited institutions that lead to any type of educational, professional, or objective, vocational and professional certification tests, on-the-job training, and some national admission tests like the SAT. Tuition and fee payments are generally made to the institutions, and they cover the in-state rate for public institutions less certain student aid amounts, or up to $27,000 or about $27,000 for private or foreign institutions paid directly to the institution again. So there's a housing allowance as well of up to $4,644. That's the highest rate. This is really dependent on your location. And the rate is based on the same rate for if I were basically a sergeant level, that's what with dependents, that's the basic housing allowance rate I would get if I were currently serving. So that's what that rate is based on. Individuals can also receive up to $500 for relocation if they meet certain criteria, like coming from a rural area. And just in terms of who's receiving this individual maximum benefit, so it's not everyone. Individuals receive the maximum benefit if the member has served for at least 36 months, was discharged due to a service-connected disability, or is a Purple Heart recipient. Those FRI scholarship recipients that I mentioned also receive the maximum benefit. And the monthly benefit is adjusted down by a certain percentage for individuals who don't meet those criteria, or for those who are enrolled part-time. And then finally, and this is again just based on some research from publicly available sources, but here's some programs that may be available to certain spouses and children. A lot of these, and I won't go through the eligibility for all of them, but a lot of these have capped participants, so it's not going to be available for everyone. But there's a veteran work study program. This presentation focused most on education programs. Some Chapter 41 counseling, training, and placement services may be available to spouses or dependents. There's a Yellow Ribbon GI Education Enhancement Program. So if the college is participating, the VA will provide matching funds. So if my benefit doesn't cover all tuition, the VA will kind of match the college and what they're able to put up as well for that differential. And then there's an Edith Rogers STEM Scholarship. That's an additional 9 months of coverage for certain STEM programs. And again, a select number of participants. Happy to take any questions now that I'll most likely write down and have a federal expert come back, or if you all have them later, in writing, we're of course happy to follow up.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to reiterate again for the work group members and the stakeholders that are here that our preference would have been to have had a expert from the federal level come and do the benefits presentation. To the degree you feel like information is inaccurate based on the sources that staff had, please feel free to comment during the public comment period when Senator Favola opens that up, or provide us with written comments, because we would want it to be absolutely be 100% accurate.
And we can still reach out to the Federal Veterans Affairs Administration and we may yet get a speaker.
Correct, yes.
The federal program. Colleagues, do you have any questions? Okay.
I have just one quick one.
Senator
And
DeStefano?
then that'll be it on this. And I just did a quick Google search and found that Fairfax for the housing allowance is $2,600 for GMU. Where in Virginia is it $4,644 per month? That seems excessively high. I know Virginia Beach is much lower than Fairfax. I'm just curious where the 4644 came from.
Madam Chair, Senator Steph, so that came from a congressional researcher, so that is a national rate. That is the
Oh, so
most,
that's
anyone,
probably
that could be like New York or San
California
Francisco.
or something.
Correct, which is why I did want to
Okay.
make it clear that it's based on your location. It's based on what someone who's serving in
But
that
it's
area
not-
would
It's
get.
not Virginia.
And that number is based on a Congressional Research Service report, which would be a national number.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that when I saw this, I was like, if Fairfax is 2,600, I don't think we have 4,400 or 4,600 in Virginia.
Again, I just remind the audience, if you believe some of this information is incomplete or we would benefit from additional information, please provide it to the committee. We want to have as complete picture as possible. Any other comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Katie?
And Madam Chair, we have, I believe DVS is here as well. Maybe they can chime in on some of this. if they
DVS,
want to.
if DVS
not.
has a particular comment, they're welcome. I am going to move to public comment. Is there a representative? And this would be from our Virginia Department of Veterans Affairs.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Chuck Zingler. I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Veteran Services.
Welcome. Did you want to make a statement or?
I certainly am willing to make a statement, but I will tell you that this is a wonderful initiative and we support this meeting to get full information out into the open. Listening in the back of the room, I think there's a lot of misinformation being stated. One, the Department of Veteran Services has been working on this program for many, many years. We are not recruiting. Actually, the heroes that have served, died, killed in action, missing in action, prisoners of war, and now 90 to 100% disabled are generally young, and their dependents that earn this benefit are very young when they are missing or killed or wounded. And so the ages when they become eligible and then come off eligibility change year by year and often don't happen for decades after their wartime event. So in the history and in the SHEV documentation of the history of this program that you've all seen, it doesn't reflect that these hockey sticks that they talk about and talk about the growth, even your representation. We're not recruiting. People are definitely becoming more aware of the program, and people then are able to enjoy the benefit of this education that were earned by death and wounds. And so to think that somehow we are creating a problem, we don't see it that way. We absolutely see that this is a program that our legislature has developed on behalf of those that have wounded, and those growth numbers will change year over year. And that information is definitely available with the coordination of the federal organization, the Veterans Administration.
Commissioner, I just want to be clear, we in no way meant to imply you were creating a problem.
No. I understand, but I think words matter and facts matter, and right now we have a very frustrated, definitely frustrated group that have earned these benefits, and now in a very non-transparent way have been have been told that this benefit is not going to go forward. And I appreciate the language that you started this session with, that you're going to repeal this on Monday. I'm a little bit concerned that the two actions of both bodies of this state government now have to make sure that they're coordinated so that their languages, to your term, ma'am, are identical, or they won't be able to make the effect that you intend to. And I hope that our great legislature coordinates so that happens. And I'm also a little, we have a task force right now, and I also hope that that task force is able to communicate with your work group. And the more different bodies that discuss these issues, the greater chance there is for misunderstanding or inaccuracies And we just want to make sure that the program that has been delivered for this Commonwealth, which is extremely popular and extremely important to those that benefit from it,
Commissioner,
doesn't get lost.
thank you.
Madam Chair.
I have one question for you, and
Sure.
then we'll go to public comment. Senator McPike.
Yeah, I just wanted to get to public comment because I know a lot of people have spent the time to get here. Both myself and Senator Reeves serve on the task force as well, and so I know we'll be coordinating information back to this work group. And so, you know, we'll be continuing on that process. I appreciate the Commissioner's comments today and look forward to public comment.
And,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Before we go to public comment, and I'll be very brief, I promise. Secretary Ziegler, thank you for your service and thank you for speaking on this. Let me just clarify one thing. The House passed a total repeal bill a few minutes ago, which is transmitted to the Senate. So it's up to us to act on that on Monday. We don't have to have an identical bill. We act on their bill that they're sending over. That's how the process works. We can submit bills, and you know, in order not to have the House come back into session, we would pass their bill, which I hope we do. And if you look online, there's 20 members of the Senate signed up as co-patrons on that bill. And I'm very proud of that. And Commissioner and Chuck, we're friends. The fact that this program's been marketed to our fallen who deserve this benefit, I'm a huge supporter, and I'm one who's helped market it. So I take pride in marketing this to the families of the fallen because these are the people I served with. And these are the ones that have had my back when I've been overseas, and I'll have their back here. And I want to make sure that we have an open, honest hearing. But I also want to say our legislation doesn't have to be exactly. We've got to take action on their bill. And I hope we take positive action on the bill.
Senator
Thank you,
Steff.
Madam Chair. And I'll shut up now.
Senator Steff, I appreciate your comments, and I want the audience to know that every member up here is very grateful and very aware of the service of our veterans and the sacrifices their families have made. We are trying to do a good job, a job that reflects our appreciation and honors the work of our veterans and the sacrifices of their families, and also honors our responsibility to ensure that we run programs in an efficient way, in a way that maintains viability. So I would ask my colleagues to maintain the decorum that would be necessary so we can keep the conversation on a civil level and not an emotional level. There will be time for advocacy, Senator DeSteff. You will definitely have input into our study and other venues, but I would like to try to keep our emotions in check for the moment so we can all enjoy each other's company, but more importantly, so that we can come to a productive and hopefully collaborative, and to the degree that we can garner a consensus. And that really is what this is all about, right? We're all in this together, and we want to create something that is meaningful and viable. So with that, I am going to open the meeting to public comment. We've allowed for 30 minutes. I did say back when we would have limited public comment. I would like the speakers to speak less than 3 minutes. So if we have 3-minute speakers, we only get 10 speakers. But if you could speak less than 3 minutes, then more speakers will be heard. If you can add to the conversation, that would be greatly appreciated. And we are all interested, again, in any of your written comments or other documentation you would like to share. As April Keyes explained, there would be an opportunity, did you say after this meeting until 12 midnight?
Madam Chair,
Go
it
ahead,
will be posted live at 12 p.m. because that was our projected end time, and it will be live until 12 a.m. today.
Having said that, would you please line up behind the podium if you wish to speak? And if individuals are sympathetic to the speaker may turn around and ask those who are sympathetic to stand up. I would also ask that the audience not applaud. If you want to wave your hand like this, that would be helpful, but applauding actually eats into the time that we've allotted for speaking. Thank you so very much. And will the first person come forward and please state your name?
Hi, good morning. I appreciate the time to speak with you all today. My name is Ella Hester, and I'm here today because without a complete repeal of House Bill 6001, my future and my family's future is in jeopardy. I am the daughter of 2 disabled Navy veterans. My father recently retired after 23 years of service, and I am currently using FEMSTEP under his rating. Growing up, I never had a place to call home. My father missed a lot of my childhood to include major milestones, birthdays, and holidays. While my mother was home, I watched her battle service-connected PTSD and know the weight that and other service-connected disabilities placed on her family. She, too, is a 100% PNT disabled veteran. I didn't expect Virginia to be my forever home. After my father received orders here for his last tour, we talked in great length about why retiring here and finally establishing roots would be beneficial for our family. The primary reason being the education benefits promised by the state. There were several other reasons too, including easy access to continue their care at Portsmouth Medical Hospital. After graduating high school, I opted to start at a community college in an effort to save money. This upcoming semester will be my final semester before transferring in the spring to a 4-year school and complete my bachelor's degree. I have worked very hard, keeping a respectable GPA and working to save for additional expenses. I have been using FEMSTEP for the past year and have the intention of continuing to use it to waive tuition costs once I transfer. These surprise changes have left me blindsided with no clarity about my future. For my younger sibling, a junior in high school at the Governor's STEM Academy in Virginia Beach, a lack of complete repeal would be detrimental to their academic plan as well. We are not an anomaly. We are just few of thousands of students who are affected by this issue. And I know there are many, many families holding the same fear and anger right now, whose homes are filled with rage and tears. Representatives, as a newly registered voter, I am learning the process and paying attention closely to how you are using your position in office. So far, I am not impressed. While I am hopeful that you will make the right decision today and Monday, please keep in mind that you are playing games with the future of Virginia. Thank you for your time.
I do want to know, why don't we practice this? This would be better. You know that the current budget language does have grandfathering clauses in there. So I wanted to make that point. Go ahead.
Not for her sister.
We are the experts.
Yeah. I appreciate your patience. Go ahead.
All right, Madam Chair, thank you for your time. Before I start, I want to make a note that, first of all, we were told to check our emotions for our entire military careers. This is with our families. It's very emotional. Second point, it's also not polite to put out misinformation. So I think we have a duty to make it correct. Like you said, we are the experts. We're the ones that deal with these benefits. Our families deal with these benefits every day. My name is Christian Solda. I'm an educator for a higher learning institution. I was a former public school teacher, and I'm medically retired at 100% from the United States Army. I'm a veteran and the founder of a veteran nonprofit. I moved here from Louisiana in 2021 because of the VMSTED program and to escape the political corruption that is so controlling in the state of Louisiana. I don't have to make that a statement. Watch the news, you'll find it out. Last week, our family went to the Capitol to advocate for the promises made by those who stood on the front lines of freedom. We watched from the gallery as senators debated the benefits promised through VMSTED for veterans who are severely disabled or deceased. I brought my kids, they're here today, to show them what democracy looks like and how the Senate represents the voice of the people in our state. Unfortunately, they witnessed the complexities and challenges of the political process. They saw one person block a bill that would have provided these crucial benefits. It was a thought-provoking moment, an examination of our political process. Should one person be able to block an entire bill that was supported by so many? One poignant moment came when my young son noticed the state flag on the Senate floor. Remembering a history lesson I had given him, he excitedly pointed it out and said, "Look, Dad, our flag with that saying about how bullies will be defeated. Sic semper tyrannis, thus always to tyrants." The state motto, it signifies that tyrannical leaders will inevitably be overthrown. I remind you this November, I will remember, we will remember, many key positions within a state government will be up for elections. What the party represents will be up for election. It is a reminder of the powers of our vote and the importance of active civil participation. My other son made the comment on the elevator on the way up here. He looked up to me and said, "Dad, why are we coming over here to this building?" And I said, "It's to remind those that call themselves honorable that they gave us a benefit that we earned, that they made us a promise." And he stopped me and he said, "Dad," he's only 5 years old. He said, "Dad, we never break our promises, do we?" And I said, "No, son, we don't. It's about integrity." And I see my time's almost up. The other day, my son brought a whoopee cushion to a chair behind me. And he made a joke and just made it turn off. It set me off and I was on the floor for 30 minutes. 30 minutes because of the struggles that I go through. He's 5 years old. I don't have much to give him, but what I promised him when I moved here was an education. You promised an education to him. Uphold your promises. He shouldn't have to live with my disabilities, but he does every day. They all do. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Melanie Clark. I lost my husband in the line of duty. He was Lieutenant Bradford Clark of Hanover County, who died for his crew on October the 11th, 2018. Our family has struggled, and this waiver tuition program affects our family directly, but not just our family, all the firefighter families and the police officer families and our military families who paid the ultimate sacrifice. Our family does deserve this tuition waiver benefit, and it's very unfair, and it's caused our families to relive the worst moments of our entire life. So I'm asking for your support for a full repeal. Please don't leave our families behind. Our family members died to protect you. Thank you.
My name is Amy Griffin, and my husband was Norfolk firefighter and operator Christopher Griffin, who died in the line of duty. Chris worked for the city of Norfolk for over 10 years. Chris died 1,000 days ago, and we feel his absence every single day, and every day we grieve that loss. You said earlier not to make this an emotional thing. This is emotional for me, for our family, for all of us here. So while we try to maintain being civil, it's very much emotional for all of us. And I think you need to understand that when we're speaking. And when you're speaking to us, this is very emotional for us. We feel the loss of his laughter. We feel the loss of his smile, his funny jokes. We feel the loss of his arms hugging us for no particular reason. We also feel the loss of the life that we had and the financial stability that we had. When Chris died, our world changed drastically. Everything became uncertain, and life and plans that we had went out the window. I was left to raise an 8.5-year-old, our 8.5-year-old son, to teach him things that Dad is supposed to teach him. Have you ever had to teach your son Dad things? It's really hard for a mom to teach Dad things. Among a lot of other things, I was left to figure out how exactly my son's future will play out and how we go forward with holes in our heart. I was left to figure out how to pay for things, how to plan for a future that is now completely, drastically different, and only one parent will be part of. Do you know how stressful being the one person to do everything is? Everything is difficult and hard every day. Why are you trying to take more things from us and make things harder for us? I ask you all, Have you ever had to hold your child at night because they are crying so much because they miss their dad? And you can't explain to them why dad died because you don't understand it yourself. I have, and I continue to do that quite a few nights a week. Every single thing in our life is harder. Again, I ask, why are you trying to make things harder with these changes? I was told when Chris died that our son's college education would be taken care of under the benefits of this tuition waiver program with Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Program, the education program. I was told that school would be one less thing that we had to worry about and one less thing that I had to try to plan for. That was such a relief to not have to worry about that. Because my husband, Chris, died in the line of duty, our son could go to college without having the burden of extra financial aid and financial loans and everything else. But now, by doing all of this, what you're saying to my son is that you don't think his dad dying is good enough. It's not a good enough reason for him to be able to use these benefits because you're now taking them and making them harder. What you're saying to us is that our loss isn't a big enough loss by your standards, and you think we don't deserve it. And now you're making that college process harder, not just for us, but for everybody in this program. These are benefits that our families are entitled to receive because we have lost so much already. These are benefits that you promised to us when Chris died. We're not some line in a budget plan. We are real people, and we have suffered real and significant and devastating losses. This is why this is so emotional for us. You need to stop making things so much harder for us. You need to make this right for us and for all of these families and for the people in this program and pass a clean repeal of this bill. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Aiden Bennett. I'm a Hampton Roads native. I've committed to George Mason University in the fall to study biology. My father qualifies for Tier 1 under VMS DEP. My plans may need a change due to the recent gutting of it. My father is a non-combat 100% permanently and totally disabled Army veteran. He was born and raised in Richmond, but moved to Hampton Roads in 2004 to live with my mother because he lost his job due to his disability. He has been living with chronic physical and mental injuries from his military service since 1994. I'm sorry. And he was medically discharged, though he planned to stay in until he could retire. I'm sorry. He missed my graduation on Saturday, June 8th, and I've been taking care of him since I was very little. I've tried to help him as best as I can. Oh, sorry. Yes, please.
Due to VMS STEP, I choose to attend an in-state public university and join Air Force ROTC rather than go out of state in order to lessen the financial burden on my father's fixed income. I may be forced to quit George Mason University and apply to a school closer to home here in Virginia, or to a family out of state, since I plan for Chapter 35 and Pell Grants to be used for my room and board. I beg you to support the reinstatement of VMS STEP in its original form and aim to allow those like me to be able to attend public universities in the state of Virginia with the benefit that my father has earned. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maisie Scher, and I'm a sophomore at Battlefield High School. My dad is a 100% non-combat related disabled veteran. I want to remind our representatives today that there are numerous service members who were harmed and became disabled in non-combat areas. They were still serving our country, and they shouldn't be left behind. I can understand that people make mistakes, but I also know When you make mistakes, you're supposed to fix it and make it right. Taking away this debt was a mistake because it broke a promise and hurt families like mine all over the state. I am here for myself, my two brothers, asking for you to fix what you broke. Please restore VEMSTEP program and leave none of us behind. If you allow SB 6009 to pass, I will be a junior in high school by then, and it will still affect me and my brothers and many families just like mine. We will be in the same place next year. Kids like me will be stressing the entire time, wondering what the state wants to do next. And it's not fair. This is not what veteran community wants. We need VEMSTEP back to the way it was. My family was not given enough time to prepare to send us all to college. Please reverse and restore all of VEMSTEP. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Betty Walker. A vehicle is pulled off on the shoulder of the interstate. A trooper comes by to offer assistance. Boom, 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 boom. The trooper is shot dead. That trooper was my husband, Master Trooper Junius Alvin Walker, who gave 35 years of dedicated service to the Commonwealth of Virginia. He and other first responders and military were promised benefits for survivors. Now you're trying to take those benefits away because the price is too high. The price my husband paid was too high. Ms. Lucas, I know you're not here, but how dare you try to take away those benefits from us? How dare you?
My name's Tom Coffin. Live in King William. I'm a 100% disabled combat veteran from Desert Storm. This is Loki, my side partner. Been lied to by my government quite a few times. First time was 1990 when they gave me experimental vaccines and anti-nerve agent pills and said that they were perfectly safe for our bodies. That turned out to be a lie. That's where my disabilities have come from. The second time was by the state of Virginia when I went to file for my disabilities. The state employed VSO officer, instead of filing it to the government, filed it to our personal storage facility in Caroline County back and I had gotten almost about 10 years worth of benefits denied because of that. I got a nice little letter in 2016 saying, we're sorry that happened from the AG. Now this, my son is a rising freshman in high school. He's also a brain cancer survivor. He 4.1 GPA, Air Force JROTC, National Honor Society, top 15 in his class, all while battling brain cancer and COVID at the same time. I never told him about this program because I wanted him to excel on his own. But this year I said, all the things that I've told you to do, you have done. And because of that, this is what your reward is. Until I heard on May 12th, Jeremy McGrath from the Channel 12 said the VMSD program is getting cut. It's the very first time I heard about it, and I'm really politically in tune. This seems like has been given a gift. Sorry.
Excuse me, I just want to say it's really not within the rules of decorum to call out a specific senator. So I would ask that the audience not do that.
I have a First Amendment right. I can say whatever I want, I believe, right?
Well, we do.
I'm not a member of your quorum.
We do have rules that govern.
You have rules.
Well, you are at our hearing, and we would like you to have some decorum. So I just ask you.
A certain senator who's the senior member of this quorum is taking it upon herself to solely stop this program in this General Assembly. She is the only one that's in the way. The House has gone today and passed it, and the Senate has got a lot of people that make it. Unless it goes through her, none of this happens.
We will have a meeting July 1, and we'll see what happens. You do? Yes, and I will add it back.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
This is despicable. We gave our lives. We gave our bodies. I live in pain every damn day. I have severe PTSD. I can't get out and go places I'd like to go to. But my kid deserves this. I've given it all. I can't work. I can't do anything. But I can give this to my kid. Think about who you're screwing over. It's the kids. It's nobody else.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Kelly Hannum. I am a resident of Chesapeake, and I am a retired civil engineer and explosive ordnance disposal officer from the United States Air Force. We returned to Virginia last year after I retired from 23 years of service. Because some of the programs or some of the proposals that have come up have talked about leaving non-combat veterans out of the mix for VEMSTEP, I want to show you what a 100% permanent and total non-combat veteran looks like. From 2005 to 2008, I commanded the busiest Air Force explosive ordnance disposal unit, that's like a military bomb squad, in the continental US at Dover Air Force Base. Our home station operations tempo hovered around 300 missions per year, while we responded to our share of found ordnance and suspicious packages. The majority of our missions were in support of the DoD Port Mortuary. You see, we had to examine every fallen hero that came back from the war zone. And when our X-ray scans found something of concern or that was inconclusive, we had to investigate the human remains by hand. That was almost 20 years ago, and I can still remember what those young men and women looked like, smelled like, felt like. But I'm not a combat veteran. Now, keep in mind that during this 3-year period that I'm speaking of, that was what I did when I was home. I also deployed to Iraq for 6 months and Afghanistan for 6 months. There, I oversaw the teams that went out and disarmed improvised explosive devices, destroyed weapons caches, and performed post-blast investigations on vehicles that had been hit. I went on missions with these men and women wearing 50 pounds of body armor and other such things. One morning in Iraq, several mortars struck about 150 meters from where I had just minutes before been sleeping. It woke me up. In the chaos, I ran out of my trailer wearing flip-flops and having shorts and having a rifle slung over my back. I checked on my friends, and then I ran towards the impact zone because I was the only EOD guy on the base, and I needed to make sure it was safe to evacuate the wounded. Got that done, but that was not combat because I was on a base. I'm not special. There are lots of non-combat veterans like me, that come back with stories that we kind of think are funny, but horrify our civilian friends. We come back with stories that we don't talk about because we don't want to remember them. I'm having to tell stories that I didn't want my 3 boys to ever hear, and I'm having to do it in multiple public forums. So, clean repeal, take us back to May 12th, and then we can have a study and we can figure out how to make this program sustainable. But clean repeal, keep your promise. Yeah.
Tyler, where are we on the time? Do we have another 10 minutes or? Well, okay, we will allow for 10 more minutes of testimony and then I will cut it off at that point. So for those of you who are standing, decide how you're going to make your presentations or who should come first. 10 more minutes and then we will conclude public comment.
Madam Chair, we've had people drive from all over the Commonwealth. I would beg you just to let the crowd finish. I mean, these people have gone through things that, it brings back things that I've blocked out for 20 years. So You can shut it down, but I'm going to be here till every last one has said what's on their mind. Thank you.
I will continue to limit individuals. If we're going to hear everybody, I will have a hard and fast 3-minute rule. When the buzzer goes off, you'll have to complete your thought. Is that fair?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So please, thank you. Please honor that, and we will, for those of you who are in line, go ahead.
Okay, hello. My name is Sam Payton, and my message is directed to those who are undecided or do not plan to repeal this. And I want to start my statement by... Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. I want to start my statement by posing a question. What message do you think you are sending when you do this? What do you think kids take away from this? Because for me, it tells me that you don't care. You don't care about the sacrifices veterans and their children have to make and endure every day. That our suffering and our needs should be thrown to the wayside because it is an inconvenience for someone more powerful, more rich, someone you can benefit more from appealing to. And it is sickening. You can see the way we're impacted, the people who have been reliving things they don't want to think about, kids who have to go through this every day and live with the trauma that their parents have suffered through, all of it. We have done our best to remain calm and collected when we speak, but we are not infallible. We have wept at having yet another promise stolen from us. I've seen it enough in my own home. I have seen it here, and it is too much. I'm tired of seeing people here, everyone here who's speaking, who is sitting in the crowd, who is at home, having to go through this, having their lives upended and thrown into disarray because you just can't decide to keep it the way it was. I don't understand it. Just for families who have already lost so much, why do you insist on taking more from them? These are people whose lives have been irreparably changed by the trauma and pain they have endured and witnessed. And yet, you all insist on adding this mountain of grief and stress upon our shoulders and expect us not to protest a weight we are not meant to bear. I ask that you repeal and restore this because these people, like veterans, dependents, everyone associated with it, we don't fight and we don't live through this for nothing. This is something we deserve. It is rightfully ours, and I think it is just sickening to steal it from us. That's it. Sorry, thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Parker. I served in the U.S. Army for over 20 years to include time in the infantry and a deployment to Iraq. I was rated by the VA at 100% P&T disabled, effective the day I left active duty. The hazards of service are worldwide and can come from many sources other than service and combat. The axiom used in my younger days was that if people are not dying, you're not training hard enough. Preparing for war requires difficult and dangerous training. Training injuries and death, like my neck injury from an airborne jump in elevated winds, are an unfortunate part of military life. Dangerous environmental exposures are also an unfortunate aspect of service in the military. Exposure to carcinogenic and other dangerous substances abound in the military environments. While vaccines are generally safe, a vulnerable individual can be killed or sickened by them, especially when they are forced all at once like they were when I entered. Vaccines are designed to trigger the immune system, and sometimes that can go dangerously awry. So let me ask you, is your constituents' PTSD from being raped in the barracks at Fort Myers or Fort Belvoir any less worthy? Is your Virginia National Guard's constituents' paralysis from an air assault school accident at Fort Barfoot less worthy than the same injuries from a helicopter incident in Afghanistan? Is your constituents' debilitating reactive arthritis from drinking water contaminated with bacteria any less worthy because that exposure occurred while stationed at Fort Gregg Adams rather than Iraq? Is your constituent's death or disability any less significant because he was shot at a stateside military base or a local recruiting station? Is your Marine constituent's injuries from a rollover accident while conducting military training at Quantico any less worthy? Is a pilot killed when his fighter jet crashes outside of Langley Air Force Base less worthy than a pilot whose plane crashes in Afghanistan? Are a Portsmouth sailor's severe burns from a fire on a ship while training off the coast of Virginia less worthy than the same burns from a ship fire in the Persian Gulf? Is a sailor's cancer from asbestos exposure from repairing ships at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard less worthy than cancer from burn pit exposures in Iraq? The VA does not think so, as they treat both as presumptive service-connected conditions. Are these non-combat service deaths and disabilities incurred in military service less worthy due to geography? They are not. Service-connected is the worthiness standard. Do not let geography and other circumstances cheat your constituents out of benefits earned from the hazards and risk of military service. Maintain VISDEP benefits for Tier 1 deaths and disabilities. They too earned it. They too deserved it. I will tell you, I don't think anybody here or even the folks at VIMSDEP clearly understand what is and isn't Tier 2. And if you're going to make changes based off that, you need to know it to the nth detail. Also, I'd like to say that both Senator Sorvo and Lucas have not shown up to these to listen to our issues. I've tried to have an appointment with my senator, Senator Sorvo, to no luck. I wish more people than you would listen. Thank you.
Thank you. And members stood up. Michael, members stood up while you were speaking, so you obviously have relayed a thought that has been shared by those in the audience. So thank you.
All right.
Yes, sir.
My name is Hal Roche. I'm the past National Commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. I live in Hampton, Virginia.
Welcome.
Thank you. We've been told our whole career, this country was built on the back of veterans. And we accept that. And every now and then, we get past a bone like an education for our kids if we die in combat or become 100% disabled. We take that. That's part of what we do. But to now put this on the back of our kids and our spouses, that's just wrong. There's a whole nother aspect that nobody's talked about yet. And that's our active duty men and women, our firefighters, our policemen, our first responders that are on duty today around the world, dodging missiles in the ocean, taking missiles coming into the bases. In their mind, their kids, their spouses were taken care of. They didn't have to think about what happens if the missile gets me, if the bullet hits me in the head. They didn't have to think about what was going to happen back home. They knew we had their back. And all of a sudden, we have ripped that out from them. Now, is their mission, when they're fighting their mission, is their mind 100% on that mission? I don't know. For some of them, I will guarantee it's not. Because family is the most important thing we have. This is all encompassing. I know I'm speaking to the choir. The fact that you're here and you're listening, you want to make a difference. We have got to look at not only those that are left behind now, but those that are fighting in the front wars as we speak. Thank you.
I'm short as well. My name is Katrina Fry. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, 100% PNT disabled from military sexual trauma. I am one of the faces of those who were raped in the service. I was accused of wearing the wrong thing. I was interrogated for hours. I was questioned about what was in my purse, and nothing happened to the person who committed this crime against me. I, however, was reclassified, sent to a new duty station, and finally honorably discharged. This I have carried with me for 30 years. It has made me less of a mom. It has made me less of a teacher. I can't even teach anymore. I am Tier 1. I still served my country. I still think my child deserves these benefits. There is no distinction, like someone else has previously said, that my disability counts less in the eyes of the military. To take this from my child is yet another slap in my face. To take this from my child is to remove something good that could have come from that horrible experience. So I just don't understand. I just don't understand. We have to fix this. Something good needs to come from that haunts me. The panic attacks, the night terrors. Something has to be done to fix this.
Thank you for sharing your story, and many people stood up, so you have spoken on behalf of others. So thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leslie Ormond. I'm the spouse of a 90% disabled veteran. In short, I don't think we are broken enough to be able to receive the benefits we were hoping for my son in just about 6 weeks when he's to start JMU. My husband was born and grew up in Portsmouth in the Port Norfolk neighborhood where his mother and sister still reside. When he enlisted into the reserves after college, his home of record was Portsmouth. Our family is considered Tier 2, grandfathered, and our son qualifies for a full Pell Grant of just over $7,300. As a 90% disabled family, we pay full taxes. We do not qualify for any veteran tax assistance programs. We do not qualify for the benefits that she spoke about earlier, like Chapter 35. We planned entirely around the use of the VEMSTEP program as a waiver for tuition. We plan to use the Pell Grants and other aid as of May 1st toward room and board, not knowing that on May 13th, that plan was upended and the budget bill passed with language requiring VEMSTEP will no longer be a waiver program, but a last payer. We're probably your worst case scenario of how badly that last payer language affects all of us. It requires all funds a student has must go to tuition as a consequence. This leaves us with an unexpected bill of more than $13,000 with only a few weeks' notice. Being grandfathered does not change this fact. Thus, an insurmountable hardship on those of us with the least financial resources has happened. Add to this the emotional toll and embarrassment of having to air financial information to publicly justify our eligibility and funding to politicians who want to change the rules after decades of this program, when this was earned from service and sacrifice by all of us, Tier 1, Tier 2, everyone. If the designed budget changes do not work for even low-income, full Pell recipients who are also qualified disabled veterans, then who does it work for? No one. It does not work for any veteran, I can tell you that. We have all been left behind with no notice, and none of us given the dignity to try to arrange for any financial planning with just weeks' notice. For this reason, and for every veteran family, regardless of tier, the only fix is a full repeal and to eliminate the last payer language. I've got to pay a bill in just a few weeks. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Carrie Lynch. I live in Stafford County. They told me girls don't join the Marines. I wasn't like most girls. As many brave women before me who chose non-traditional paths, not unlike some of you here in the gallery today, I didn't listen to them. At 17 years old, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I was raised by a Marine Corps veteran father who was also a police officer. Patriotism, support of law enforcement, and love of this great nation was ingrained in me from the day I was born. I served this country for 21 years across multiple continents, countries, wars, and conflicts. I bleed green. If I close my eyes, I can smell the burning fuel from the jetliner that crashed into my office building, the Pentagon, on 9/11. I cannot sit with my back to the door when I go out to eat. I'm always mapping out in my mind my evacuation route whenever I'm out in a public place. Unfortunately, I have passed these anxieties on to my 19-year-old daughter. In fact, she recently told me that when she was in middle school, she started coming up with secret plans for how she would escape if there was an emergency. I bring up my daughter to show that some of my military scars have become hers. She has copied my behaviors because I am her mother. My scars are her scars. She doesn't deserve that. I deployed to Operation Desert Storm before I was able to cast my first vote. Upon my retirement from the Marine Corps, I chose to remain in Virginia. I didn't stay for VEMSTEP. I had a 6-year-old and wasn't thinking about college yet. I stayed because I love Virginia. It was where I wanted to raise my daughter. I am now questioning my decision. I'm 100% PNT disabled as designated by the Department of Veterans Affairs. My daughter's father was not only a Marine Corps veteran, but a police officer. His end of watch was October 6, 2020. On that day, my daughter became a statistic and I became a mother of a fatherless daughter. My daughter has a disabled mother and a dead father. Because her father was a police officer in California and we live in Virginia, the VEMSDEP program was the only viable program for her to go to college. I'm speaking to you today with a little of my story to show that every family is different. The pain and scarring felt by each family is different. Some families have suffered the ultimate sacrifice for this great nation. Every family feels the sacrifices 24 hours a day. Each family that uses VEMSDEP is grateful there is something to help financially by providing a waiver for higher education while we deal with the physical and emotional disabilities that resulted from our service. Please prove to all veterans of Virginia that we matter. Prove that the time we spent serving this great nation and the Commonwealth to protect democracy, freedom, and the Constitution was not in vain by restoring VEMSDEP. We are counting on you as you have counted on all of us since 1775. Semper Fidelis.
Chief Warrant Officer 3, retired Brian Smith, Shenandoah County. These briefs that you received were full of a lot of words. They lacked nuance, they lacked context, and they were not accurate, and they were deceiving. They might as well have been titled, "The Fed is going to pay for all these veterans so the Commonwealth doesn't have to." It was not accurate in the way it was represented, and 90% of it applies not only to the 90% and above veterans, but the pool of 90% and below. Can you imagine the feeding frenzy that will ensue when you start to make this population fight for the same scholarships and money that is already a chum bucket for the 90% and below? Secondary and tertiary impacts. That's what we have to understand here. All right? I never promised my daughter anything. She was an Army brat her entire life. I didn't promise I'd be home for Christmas. I didn't promise I'd be home for birthdays. I didn't promise I'd be home for any kind of graduations because I knew that if the call of duty came, I could not keep that promise. What I did promise to do was to defend the Commonwealth. And you know what? I didn't ask you guys for a last payer freaking option. I didn't tell you to apply for some other defense program before I thought that I should go ahead and do it. Time is valuable. I'll close. It is the veteran, not the preacher, who has given us freedom of religion. It is the veteran, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It is the veteran, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the veteran, not the campus organizer, who has given us freedom to assemble. It is the veteran, not the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. And it is the veteran, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It is the veteran who salutes the flag, who serves under the flag, and whose coffin will be draped by that flag. Reverse and repeal. There's no other option.
I think we heard the message. Thank you.
Senator Steph, thank you for giving everybody else this opportunity. It's greatly appreciated. Paul Doyle, Sergeant, United States Army, retired. Lots of people have talked about the nuances of combat-related, non-combat-related, so I'm going to skip it. What I want to talk about is I'm 100% permanent and totally disabled. I can't go to Disneyland with my kids because I'm not going to make it. And I'll make them miserable if I go. My kids sacrifice every day their dad because of my service. My wife sacrifices her husband because of my service, because I fall short. I fall short because of the injuries I incurred in service. It is a great thing that a soldier is able to do for his country. It is a greater thing with how we treat those soldiers when they return. But lost in that is the wives, the husbands, and the children of those soldiers. They serve just as much as we serve. And that's honest to God truth. And anybody in here will tell you, when I am in a bad spot, my wife's in a bad spot, my kids are in a bad spot. This program is kind of like a thank you to those children and those spouses that live and serve the same as we have. And I'll close with this. The last politician we ever had that wasn't a politician, General George Washington. The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the group. We stand before you today supporting the Virginia Military Survivors Independence Education Program, a symbol of hope and opportunity to many veteran families throughout the Commonwealth. Education is a powerful tool. The VMS-DE program provides dependent families with the ability to obtain an education that equips them with the skills necessary to obtain well-paying jobs and stable futures. A future that each and every veteran hopes for their families. Instilled with values from their military family members of service and toil, these are the individuals we want pursuing higher education and fulfilling subsequent positions. These individuals, having faced immeasurable personal loss, are granted the chance to pursue their aspirations, a concept every single veteran fought to preserve. It is up to you to ensure that the promise of education remains attainable. When my mother told me about the news of the reforms, chills were sent down my spine at the egregious thought. In the past week, I attended Boys State, hosted by the American Legion. Almost every counselor was a veteran, and I had the privilege of listening to many of their stories. I'm not able to talk today about what those veterans, the veterans in this room, and veterans like my father have experienced. And as a rising senior, I cannot overstate the importance of the program. However, I can say that the VMS-DE program is not a question of whether it is needed nor earned. It was earned when those 9% of Virginians made the commitment to serve for those who cannot. And now that those veterans have become those who cannot, it is time for you to make the commitment to them, honoring and supporting the families of those who have given so much for our country. To end simply, I implore you, ensure that the legacy of our fallen heroes live on through the success and achievements of their loved ones. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lily Yanofkian, and I wasn't originally planning on speaking today, but I felt that this was too important. I'm the daughter of a 100% disabled veteran from non-combat related injuries. He served for almost 24 years in our Air Force and has had almost 40 years of service in other military related career aspirations. I made the intentional financial decision 3 years ago to not use these benefits that I was entitled to and promised so that I could use them towards my graduate education, which is oftentimes more expensive. My future and financial decisions have been completely uprooted in a matter of weeks when I have been making these plans and saving for decades. What I would like to give you perspective on and explain is what this out-of-the-blue decision has done for students and citizens like me. I'm part of Generation Z. Unfortunately, our generation has faced unprecedented challenges related to the economic state of our country that we have inherited. Over 60% of my generation have been diagnosed with an anxiety-related disorder, according to a multi-year study that was published in 2023. 45% of Gen Z has expressed in a recent study that they experience these anxieties due to financial-related issues. I'm here to share on behalf of my sister, who is only 16 years old and cannot vote to express her voice like so many other young people. My brothers so far will not be affected by this program because they'll be starting their undergraduate education in the fall. But me and my sister will be forced to take out tens of thousands of dollars in debts to achieve our futures. They say that America is the home of the brave and the land of the free. Without gratitude for our veterans' bravery, our great nation would never be the promised land that so many of us have always believed it to be. Just this afternoon, I recited the Pledge of Allegiance with my fellow constituents, one nation, fighting for liberty and justice for all. That brought me hope. We need to serve our youth. We are the future. Our education is our nation's future. Full repeal or no deal. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jenna Rowe. I am the parent of 4 mostly amazing teenagers. I have been married to my Virginia, born and raised, been here for every generation known to mankind, Marine, retired Marine for over 20 years. I have a question. How can 1.7% of students be the problem with the universities? If the universities have a problem funding 1.7% of students, then maybe the public universities need to open their books for everyone to examine. Second of all, according to the Board of Visitors of VCU, this program only cost them $4 million. I believe the number you guys were given was 12. So which is it? Is it 12 million or is it 4 million? Because that's a big, big, big difference. So that is why today there needs to be a repeal and then a study, because we have been given wrong information. Everybody's been given wrong information. Even today, like some of it was wrong information. How can you make good decisions on bad information? The right thing to do is to repeal this language, have a comprehensive independent study to find out real numbers, because if a board of visitors of a university is saying 4 million, it's only costing 4 million, and then they give you, it's on their webpage. It's on their minutes. So, and this was 2023, and the 2023 number is 12 million that they give you. That is why we are pushing so hard back at this, because none of the numbers make sense. And if 2 + 2 cannot equal 20, no matter how much you want it to. And you're welcome. And then I think that is why we're so pushing back on this. If we had the study, we could honestly look at it, but there are so many different numbers. And I mean, VCU just said we have a $1.5 billion budget, and then they just lost $100 million, but they can't afford 600 students on their campus. Make it make sense. And right now it doesn't. So have the repeal, because right now there's 56 days till my kid goes to school. There has been no information given to any universities from any government body about the distribution of the VMSTEP program. And when I call to ask them about my incoming freshmen, they have no information to give me. So when we say we don't know if we're grandfathered, because just because you say it so, doesn't make it so. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Portnoy Evans Johnson. I was just an escort for one of the members who spoke to media, but I see how incredibly relevant and important it is to speak. I was raised by a World War II Marine, Okinawa World War II, phenomenal grandpa. No one is asking for added. They're just saying don't strip. I think it's outrageous, and I'm going to use my 1 minute, I've got 2 minutes left, to offer up a quote. And no glasses, but it's by retired Major General Craig Crenshaw. And he said, the family bears the brunt. They lift up, they bolster, they protect the veteran. When that person is gone, the family needs to be protected too. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. Senator, my understanding is that the bills have to match for it to, okay. What I'm asking for, I'm a Hampton Roads resident. I own a home in Senator Locke's district. I have tried to reach out to Senator Locke, Senator Lucas, as have many people. I work in the mental health field in Hampton Roads, serving our most vulnerable population. And I'm asking for a meeting. I would like these 2 senators to meet with me before Monday with other Hampton Roads families and some that are not even affected directly by this program that have concerns. Please meet with us by Monday. I'll go to Portsmouth. I live in Newport News. I will drive to Portsmouth to meet with her. That's all I'm asking for, a meeting. Please.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Wayne Nemo, and wasn't my intention to speak originally today, but after hearing everybody talk about this Tier 1, Tier 2 stuff, I was classified Tier 2. My oldest son of 5 started using the program, just got a 369 GPA at Virginia Tech, so that's what your program's getting you here in Virginia. I graduated from Virginia Tech back in the day, originally a resident of Arkansas, but came to Virginia Tech through Navy ROTC and pretty much stayed in the state of Virginia through my 20 years in the Navy. 5 kids. One of the reasons we decided to stay in Virginia when I retired, or when I left active duty, I'll get to that in a second, is because of this program. Could have went to Arkansas, has a similar program, they even cover room and board. But I decided to stay in Virginia because of this. With this program changing, even though, yes, some consider my operations in submarines as combat, we don't like to talk about it because a whole lot of issues there. But what we do in submarines is no different than what anybody in this room, whether they were here in the United States on the home front or they were on the front lines, supported our country, whether it was the war on terror or what have you. They supported our nation and freedom around the world. So trying to classify us as Tier 1, Tier 2, I just don't get it. You know, we all did our part, whether we were called to go to the front line and have a rifle in our hand, or we were maintaining the ship, or we were battling the elements. It doesn't matter. We all did our part. Some of us just got put in different circumstances. But we all face that wear and tear in our body and things like that. So that needs to be considered. But yeah, I was in submarines, and we would go out, 150 sailors. We were all one team, one fight. And that's how I view all of us here today. You're not going to split us up. We would go out, and we all knew if the worst happened, we weren't coming home. All of us were gone. There's no splitting us up. And that's how I look at this. So, yeah, I'm Tier 2. Some of them are Tier 1. Some of us are 100%. Some of us are 90. No, we're all in this together. And I'm going to advocate for all of them, no matter what. So that's just what I wanted to say today and speak for them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Staff would like to comment, so excuse me, sir.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to make it clear to the public what Senator Lucas intends to docket which bill for Monday, so that they're aware. The one you described earlier, Senate Bill 6009, she has multiple bills. I just want to let you know that that is the one that will be heard on Monday. That's her bill. I'm not speaking to the House bill, whether that's being heard. Let me be clear. We will post an agenda. There's a process where a House bill comes over. But her bill that people are describing, the previous bill, I wanted to be clear that her intent in introducing the other bill last night is that replaces that previous bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. Okay, we hear you. There is a legislative process. I'm going to ask for your patience. Senator Lucas's bill is a repeal. No, it's not. It's a repeal with a sunset. I understand the difference. I understand your position. I get it. You want the full repeal. You have been articulate and eloquent, and I thank you. And I thank you for your eloquence. We're just trying to be clear about what the next steps are in the process. So let's continue to talk. Let's continue to talk. My colleagues are watching this live stream. They are interested in what you have to say. Let's continue to have this conversation. We will get to a place that is a good place.
Good trouble.
No, good for you and good for the Commonwealth.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
My name is Joe Ellenbecker, Chesapeake, Virginia, 31 years in the Navy, retired, 100% P&T. First, I'd like to thank Senator Steph for allowing us to continue to have a voice. Thank you for being our voice on that side of the podium. I've served 31 years honorably, and I'm not going to go through because I cannot equate my service with the sad stories that some of these individuals have brought up. How you can contain your emotions is beyond me, but it is moving. Don't roll your eyes, ma'am.
I did not roll my eyes.
You did, ma'am.
Well, it was not out of disrespect. So I'd appreciate you would appreciate me. So I will be respectful to you. I would expect the same. Thank you.
I've never been more proud of my service and my brothers and sisters in the military, with first responders than I have in the last 6 weeks, and especially today. You have to realize how hard this is to come and bring up these issues and talk about these things, the impact it has on our families. And for one person, and apparently you don't want that one person named, for one person to roadblock us, don't exasperate yourself, ma'am. This is an emotional issue for us. This is a compact that was provided by the state to people that have served this state and this country. And for her to not even be here, and I hope she's watching right now. I highly doubt it. But to the people who've spoke before, she is not in communication. That is sad that she will not respond to her constituents or to other voters in this state. How can you explain that action, ma'am?
I don't have an explanation. I can say that the senators are trying to evaluate the program. It's all I can say. Your stories are incredibly important. They're compelling. I feel them, and we will do the right thing. It's a challenge.
Madam Chairwoman, words ring hollow. I will stand behind you based on what happens on Monday. I know damn well that you and your colleagues can talk to that person this weekend and resolve this. This Monday can be easy if you want it to be. If you can't be moved by the stories of these people, that is sad. Stand behind your people. Stand behind the first responders, the policemen, the firemen, and my military brothers and sisters in arms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
My name is Kayla Owen. I am head cheerleader of this chaos, I guess. So I want to start off by saying that while everybody says that they know the language, you guys don't know your language, because we were the ones that figured out first responders were impacted, and we were the ones that made the phone calls to them. So I just want to be clear with that from the very beginning. The grandfather clause and the sunset clause are not accurately in Lucas's bill. So I understand what you've been told, but the language says something different. So I really need you to go back and look at that and make sure that that's correct. And I'm not paid for this. You guys are. So I think it's a little bit embarrassing that I keep having to translate what the language actually means in terms of last payer and, FAFSA and all that stuff. I think Senator Lucas and Senator Survell should have to sit and listen to all of these statements. I don't think they've done that to this point. It's not, they haven't been present. They haven't been at the task force, despite the fact that Senator Lucas is actually on the task force. She was not physically there. She was on Zoom for about 15 minutes, introduced herself, and then hopped off of Zoom. So it's my understanding that I would really hope that before they make a decision on Monday, that they have to sit and they have to listen with their undivided attention, not scrolling on their phone or whatever they're doing. I would really like for them to sit and listen to what we all have to say. I think that is incredibly important, and I would implore you to ask them to do that. And this is the second time, by the way, that we've been asked to check our emotions or to not repeat or to not go on for too long, because that happened at the task force as well. And there were a bunch of people that also mentioned that in their task force speech about how rude and disrespectful that was, that we are sharing literally the most intimate components of the human experience and of our lives, and we're not receiving respect in doing so. So I just wanted to say that as well. So my shirt today, very bright. It says, "Let them eat cake." Do you know what that means? The phrase, from my perspective, reflects the attitudes of Senator Survell and Senator Lucas. Their total lack of understanding of what they have done to every single family in this room over the last 6 weeks. I have missed graduations for my children because I have been on phones with legislators. I have missed seeing my great aunt, who was 103, who died last week. We have canceled family vacations. You don't understand what you are doing to our daily lives. Morning, noon, and night. My son walked in the door from camp for 2 weeks. He walked in the door. I wasn't even able to take his call because I had 3 different phone calls going at the same time. I cannot be a mother because I am having to deal with this. And I just want to make one more point. I won't go over too long. But I want to make the point that the American with Disabilities Act states that you cannot ask my friend, Mr. Coffin, why he has a service dog. Yet we are being forced to prostitute ourselves to you to try and beg for a benefit that was stolen. Would you feel comfortable sharing your medical files and having to take your medical files to try and ask for something that was promised for you? Do you want to share what your pap smear results were from last year? That's basically what we're being asked to share here. We're being asked to share the most intimate details of our families' lives. Financial details. We should not have to do that. So I would implore you, the House has already made a decision. They have already fully 100% backed a repeal. I used to live in your district, ma'am. My husband was stationed at the Pentagon. I would implore you, you are here to represent the people. We are the people, and we are telling you this is unacceptable. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I just want to say thank you for being here and listening to us. I'll make mine relatively quick since I am the last person in line. But I am a Virginia Tech college student. I'm majoring in environmental policy and planning. I'm on track to graduate an entire semester early, and I plan on using my credits that I have with VMS-STEP towards my graduate degree, since I am on track to graduate early in the top 10% of my class of the university, actually. So as I head into my third year, I'm really nervous and anxious about what's to come in the future. We speak about the grandfather clause, but I maybe this is on me, but I don't know if the grandfather clause is for this year, for this semester, or for the rest of the remaining credits that I have. It's unclear to me. And so as the oldest of three, my brother spoke earlier, I felt guilty about the financial burden that I would leave my family by attending higher education. And so being approved by VMS-STEP had saved my family. Instead of student loans that might follow me for the rest of my life, or financial hardship to my parents as they have to balance medical bills, a mortgage, and basic necessities. The VMS-STEP had saved our financial situation, as well as my chance at a future in higher education. And I will be forever grateful to my father, who risked his life in the aftermath of 9/11, that he could provide this opportunity of freedom of education, similarly to the freedom that he fought for. Being accepted into the VMS-STEP program meant that my father had a 90% disability for the rest of his life. This program is offered to veterans who are no longer with us, or to veterans who have suffered tremendously for us to stand here today. While my father could not make it here today, I speak on his behalf to urge you to repeal the effects and to think about the children of the veterans who will shape the world and the education that we receive, and who may very well be sitting in the spot that you're sitting in today. Thank you.
I just kind of snuck up here, and I think that the bravery of all of the other speakers today kind of encouraged me to do so. My name is Summer Hall, and I am live in Senator Durant's area in Fredericksburg, Virginia. However, I am a DODEA teacher, and I work in Quantico, Virginia. So I just, as somebody who is not the veteran themselves, but who is the dependent. And also, people have done, I think, a really good job today in not making this partisan. And I'm going to say, I am a Democrat. And when I was at the session a few weeks ago, and we had the chance, Senator Steph came up into the gallery and met with a whole bunch of us. And I could not have been more touched by story after story, feeling the whole session that I was in some sort of bizarro land, hearing Republican after Republican speak up on behalf of this group that as a Democrat, I often feel like I'm the odd one out. And Senator Rome, you spoke up that day, and I felt seen. I've never felt more seen as I feel today in this session. But as a Democrat, I felt disappointment for the first time in my party as I heard, and I've been teaching AP Lang and Comp for the past decade, so I am somebody who's able to identify rhetoric when it makes itself known. To hear rhetoric coming from my own party was very disheartening. And to hear support after support come from the other side of the aisle, it left me in a state of cognitive dissonance for quite a while after I left the grounds that day. And my husband feels, he's 100% disabled Navy veteran. And this program gave us hope in a way that nothing has given us hope, quite honestly, since I've met him. He entered the service as an older veteran. And he has physical disabilities that are invisible to those on the outside. But his disabilities impact our family every second of every day. And to the gentleman that spoke up about how his family would be miserable if they went to Disneyland together, like, that's our life. Our husband does not participate in life with us. But the VMSDEP program brought something that he could provide our daughter with a future and an education that meant that for 1 second, that was lifted off of his shoulders. And instead of shame and hopelessness, we feel pride at being able, that his service means something. It means something anyway, but to avail ourselves of this program meant that he could provide something that otherwise he can't. He can't work. His disability is his only source of income. So for families like us, this means the world to us. And as a Democrat, I just encourage you, use your voice. Use your power, because I want to feel proud of our party. You represent everything that I stand for as a human being. But in this area, I just encourage you to use your voices to encourage your colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle to speak up for what I think you know is the right choice, and that repeal is the only good choice in this situation. So thank you for your time. Take care, and it's a pleasure to meet you today.
Thank you for the time and the opportunity. My name is Caitlin Goodale Porter. I'm an Army and a Coast Guard veteran, and also the proud wife of an Army retiree and veteran. 2 for the price of 1. Anyway, I will keep this short, but I want to say there is one silver lining to this awful, miserable experience that we have had for the past 4 months, and this is the silver lining. So please stand. I am so proud of this team. And where is Kayla? Head cheerleader. Oh, my Lord. If we could draft women right now, this is the one I want. She has done phenomenal work. Her husband is the military person, but she has the soul of a general. And we are so lucky to have her. And you know what? We're not of the same party. But if she decides to run for office, I'll be campaigning for her. Unfortunately, she's a Republican. Sorry. I am the Democrat. But we need this crowd in the legislature. Please turn us into an asset, but listen to us first, because we are telling you the truth. We are speaking truth to power, and this will matter if we get it right. We will figure this program out. There are things to be done to make it better, but first it has to survive. There is no doing CPR on the baby after you've tossed it out with the bathwater. We need a full repeal, and we need it Monday. Please, we beseech you. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us this morning. You have been a remarkable crowd. I have really appreciated you sharing your stories, and we are going to continue to work on the information we have. We want our data to be accurate. We will continue to check other sources. But more importantly, you have put such a human face on this program and such an important message to us about the children and the spouses who are benefiting so much from this. And I really am very moved. So I want you to know each one of us will be using our best judgment and our heart and hopefully whatever other strength we have to do the best we can for you all. And we do thank you all for the service, the service of your family members, and for coming today. I hope you stay with us through this process. I understand Senator McPike, did you have something you wanted to say?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really just wanted to highlight and appreciate the number of people. I recognize a lot of the stories and faces that came to the first task force meeting, of which I think we took 4 plus hours of testimony, hearing each of you, and now several hours. And I know many of you traveled, from great distances to provide that input. And so I do hope other legislators are able to if they haven't watched it live, to go back and look at some of your stories, because there are lots of different contexts, a lot of important nuance to the programs, which is not unnoticed by all of us, and I know staff and everyone else here. So I just wanted to say that thank you for those who attended the task force, as well as those new members who have just joined for the first time to provide public testimony and comment. This might be your first time out, and hopefully it's not your last. And so I appreciate your stories, and I know they're difficult ones. Thank you.
Madam Chair. All right. For all 28 of you all who, and I took notes of every single person who spoke, just wanted to say thank you for your courage today and being vulnerable enough to be visible, to put that out there, because those stories are not only heartbreaking, but sometimes just to speak them, a weird dichotomy happens. On the one hand, it can be incredibly triggering. And there's going to be a number of you who leave here today, who go back into whatever your mode of transportation was, and you're going to be reliving what you said at the mic, what other people said at the mic, and it's going to have brought you back to some really tough days. And I want to know that I hear you and I see you on that, and that it's just the fact that you're putting yourselves out there to do it out of what you've all have clearly demonstrated as a necessity. I get it. Absolutely get it. It's why I signed on to HB 6003 that passed today. It's why I signed on to SB 6006 last time as well. And, I've supported this legislation because it's the right thing to do. And I also understood that when the time came and we did not have a chance to make amendments, we didn't have a chance to do any of that, it was up or down on the budget. And if we didn't get it as of next week, government would have shut down, right? I get that there was a process that did not work for a lot of people here, and I hope that there's a lot of lessons going forward of what to do. Regarding next steps, yeah, of course I'll be on the phone working, and advocating for our position here. And look, one of my constituents from Battlefield High School spoke today from Haymarket, and my job is to serve my constituents. My constituents have asked unanimously for me to, be a good advocate for y'all. At the same time, I also recognize that the current situation that we are in, of what happens if nothing goes forward, that is unacceptable under any circumstance, period. And so Plan A is that House bill that passed today, as far as I'm concerned. Plan B, we'll see what happens on Monday. But Plan A, to me, the best bill that we could get is making sure that no one here has that anxiety going forward. And then from here, I really, really hope that everyone keeps staying engaged, especially with JLARC. JLARC does really good work on a whole lot of things. I hope we all stay engaged and we realize that we are all in this to work together civilly, respectfully. And as a legislator, sometimes you just have to take it. That's part of the deal. That's what you signed up to do. And what we have signed up to do as politicians, as legislators, is nothing compared to what you all have signed up to do in your lives. And for the families who said that military families serve, it's not just the one person, it is the whole family. I know all of us up here have stories to share in that regard. And one of the speakers here who talked about what it's like to have to hold her child who cries when her dad's not there. I was that kid. My dad killed himself when I was 3 years old, and he was a Vietnam vet. And he was one of the 17 and 22 veterans a day who died by suicide in this country. We actually did something really good on that a couple of years ago, where we actually voted for a bill for suicide prevention coordinator within DVS, and that's a great step. At the same time, I think at the very, very bottom line here is all of us on this dais today have heard you loud and clear about where you are and where we need to go. I get it, you all get it, and let's work together going forward. My office, my team and I, we will always have an open door, open policy, everything for y'all. And at the same time, I want to make sure that we do not contribute harm. And that's kind of where we're at today. So thank you so much, Madam Chair.
I wanted to thank, first of all, every one of you who've come from the entire state, all over the state. Commissioner Ziegler, thank you for being here. I know we put you on the spot. For our military, our police, our fire, our EMS who've lost their lives, for those who have today opened up the boxes that we lock up after you see these tragedies, after you go through this. When you put it in a box and you have to bring it back out, I understand the emotion that comes out with it and what it takes to put it back in that box. My children understand that. So thank you for sharing it with us. And I'm glad your emotions came out. I'm glad you showed up. And I'm glad that you're sticking together, because the motto of almost every military unit is no one's left behind. The motto of our police, fire, and EMS is don't leave anyone behind. So keep doing what you're doing. I will be down in 608 after this. If you want to talk, I'm happy to stay until I've got to be home by about 10 o'clock tomorrow, so I got plenty of time. But I'll be down in 608 after this. Thank you guys again for everything. And Madam Chair, thank you for running the hearing.
Thank you. I will just ask, thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, audience. Staff, do you have any housekeeping announcements that perhaps I forgot to make?
Madam Chair, I'll just reiterate that written comments went, the ability to submit those went live at 12 p.m. We've checked it. It appears to be working. If you have technical difficulty, though, feel free to call the main line, which is on our website. It's posted there. It's posted on the streaming link, so there's two places where you can access that. In addition to your point, we will be polling members for, you suggested up to 4 additional meetings, I believe, yes. And we will be doing that as soon as possible so that we can have those meeting dates posted to our website in advance so everyone will know when they are. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. This meeting is adjourned. And
the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.